We have Rajiv Bajaj, MD of Bajaj Auto, now joining us. Rajiv, hi, good morning.
Good morning, Anuj.
The first question that I wanted to ask you, the exclusive information that we got last month was that there's a proposal from Road Ministry about phasing out the fossil fuel-based three-wheelers by next 4 years, and non-electric two-wheelers up to 150cc by 2025. Of course, this is just a draft proposal and there would be discussions on that. But your first thoughts on this?
Anuj, my first thoughts that I have recently conveyed in the media is as follows, that although nobody can argue with the intent and the direction, but I think related to execution, I have three serious concerns. The first is that I think it is impractical really to put a deadline to something like this. Whether it's 5-year or 15-year deadline is not important. But what we are saying here is that all the current stakeholders have no experience really with any of the pieces of this puzzle, whether you're talking in terms of the technology or the distribution or the charging or consumer behavior, etc. So to even try and put a number to a deadline in my mind is completely arbitrary. This is typical a tail wagging the dog, I would say. The second is, I think it is ill-timed because, enough has been said about the effort that the industry has put into BS6 and apart from that into just being competitive because some of us are trying to be globally competitive as well. Now, so soon after BS6 to make such a drastic shift in direction, I fail to comprehend it. I mean, if you're saying 2023 for three-wheelers, for example, it means really on the ground work has to start in terms of putting vehicles on the road from 2021 for us. That means 12 months after BS6. I mean, it's almost laughable to my mind. And finally, I think whatever I heard about it, I found it to be relatively incomplete because I heard a lot about two and three-wheelers when what the world needs is car-free cities, frankly speaking. So, that's why I put it out as the three I's of being impractical, ill-timed and incomplete because this government likes this kind of sloganeering. So hopefully they'll listen to this.
Okay, there is, of course, a lot of anger on the street, especially with the two-wheeler makers. Rajiv, good morning. But, if the ministry takes into consideration the request of the industry to start this phase-wise and start only with the polluted cities, etc., what kind of immediate implications would that have on investments that a lot of the companies like yourselves would have to make in technology and, in return on interest? I mean, what are we looking at? What would the costs be that would be involved?
Well, frankly, I am all for this kind of a phased approach. And when I have had the occasion to have an audience with ministers or bureaucrats, I've been saying that, like all disruptions, one must take one bite at a time. So start with 10 or 20 polluted cities. This is what China also did. Establish proof of concept. And then discuss and debate together how to scale up from there. Let me put it like this. As I said to someone at Niti Aayog, in 70 years, this country has not been able to provide electricity everywhere. And in less than 7 years, you want to put electric vehicles everywhere. It's moronic, frankly speaking. In 5 years, I have not seen one smart city come up in the last 5 years. And in the next 5 years, we want the entire country to be electrified. It's not going to happen. So we have to go for a phased approach. Now, in terms of investments, quite frankly, the two and three-wheeler industry is not, unlike the car industry, is not a capex-intensive industry. So, barring the battery, which is its own animal, and in my view will have to continue to be imported for a long time. And that has its own complication because certain localization of battery is also being conceived to be mandated, which I think is again putting the cart before the horse. But leaving the battery aside, the rest of it, is not technology or capital intensive. So I don't see a problem with the rest of it. I think the important thing is to get experience and therefore we must start in a phased manner.
Sure. We were speaking to a lot of managements over the last couple of weeks to find out what the costs involved would be with respect to the BS6 transition, because from the 1st of April that happens. In your assessment, I mean, how much would costs go up by? For the passenger vehicle space, the sense we got is that at least diesel passenger vehicles would go up by about 10% or so. What is the investment that you have made for this BS6 transition, and will the entire cost be passed on to the consumer?
It is inevitable that with 2 and 3 wheelers, everybody will have to move towards fuel injection. I think that's the direction the industry is taking, and therefore 8 to 10,000 rupees to the consumer is what can be assumed to be a ballpark figure for the price increase. I don't see any option for any of us to do anything other than to pass this on to the consumer. So we're talking 8 to 10,000 rupees. And, in anticipation of your follow-up question, I will say that yes, this will severely dent demand, because what you can see already in the month of June now is that the stocks with CBS and ABS are now hitting the marketplace. In April and May, the industry was soft, but still had the advantage of the stocks that the dealers were carrying for a couple of months typically of the older specification. Now that the new products are coming into play from June, you can see that demand is even softer in June. Now, partly this is seasonal. It does happen after the marriage season that June, July, August, September becomes softer. But partly it's a result of stocks hitting. So if ABS and CBS are having this impact, for sure this impact will be worse with BS6 next year.
Rajiv, good morning. So, a two-part question. A fund manager who was with us on the show just before you joined in was of the opinion that at least by festive season this year, things will definitely pick up. So first, whether, given everything that you've said, whether this kind of optimism is well placed for the two-wheeler market or not. And the second part of the question is that if the government, let's say, pulls back a little bit, enhances the timelines to 26, etc., what is the kind of investment that a company like Bajaj Auto will have to start thinking of in order to get through this EV transition, even if it might be a partial transition in phases?
Well, as far as forecasting demand is concerned, whenever somebody does this, I have always requested them that if you have a secret formula or an instrument with which you are doing this, can you please share it with the rest of us? I mean, people are just saying whatever they feel compelled to say when two anchors ask them a question. They should be honest and say that we don't know. And this is not only an India phenomena. We are seeing this. I have been reviewing our global business for the last 2 days, and we are seeing massive upheavals in markets around the world. There are markets from Argentina to Myanmar which are down between 60 to 90%. And nobody is able to explain it. So I don't think anybody's forecast is worth the paper that it is written on. But going back to the previous question on BS6 for a moment, I will say this, that which I have said 6 months back, that in order to mitigate the impact of BS6, I think we must all seriously consider a reduction in GST to be timed along with BS6 products, because that can have a very ameliorating effect on BS6 implementation. Coming back to the question of EV investment, it is proportional to the scale one is talking about. I mean, today, motorcycles and scooters together are 20 million vehicles a year approximately in the Indian market alone. And what the draft notification suggests is that almost 90% of this, that 18 million vehicles, need to be converted to electric. I mean, I can't even begin to calculate numbers that are as large as that. But from Bajaj Auto's point of view, I'll tell you very candidly, we are ignoring this draft notification for now, because it is impossible to put your mind around something like this. We are going to do what we are able to afford to do. We are going to assume a much smaller volume and go with that.
Okay, fair enough. Rajiv, you've always been candid. Judging by your statement, would it be fair to say that we should not extrapolate the May data? The May data was quite good for Bajaj Auto in particular, but you think the environment is still hazy, both domestically and for the exports?
Well, I would say as far as Bajaj is concerned, the May data for the products that we have, certainly I would hesitate to extrapolate it because I can see the market is clearly softer. I think this is true for industry also. I think all of you put out news in the last 2 days about how there are shutdowns across companies. Fortunately, we are not that badly affected. Having said that, I will also like to add that we have three key new products, one each in the brand CT, Platina, Pulsar, going to market between this month and the next. So riding on that, I do hope that we will continue with our outpacing of the industry, typically by 20 to 25%. But if it were not for these new products, yes, there would be more trouble than we would have liked.
Okay, and you said June has been weak so far in terms of demand. Is your 4 lakh run rate at risk for June and July?
The 4 lakh run rate is not at risk, but we would have liked to be closer to 4.5 lakhs by this time, and it's a struggle getting there.
Okay, well, that's really candid. Thank you for stopping by and speaking to us, Rajiv. Not mincing words at all, saying that demand is weak, and with the new ABS and CBS changes as well as the BS6 transition, it could only get worse for the sector.
Yeah, I think, frankly speaking, sometimes you get more pulse of what's happening, but talking straight away to Rajiv Bajaj, because he's not the one who would say that, okay, things are good. He'll say, and the fact that he's saying that don't extrapolate the May data, and June once again is slightly weak, is telling you that the pain is not over. The only issue is, Sonia, how much of this is in the price now for the two-wheelers and four-wheelers, but problem clearly continues.
Okay.